Tonight, it's a battleground blitz with just 2 days to go until Election Day. Both presidential candidates making multiple campaign stops. The final polls show it's too close to call, and the FBI is warning about a new flood of disinformation on social media. Former President Donald Trump in 3 key states while taking aim at the news media, suggesting in a joke that he wouldn't mind someone shooting at reporters, and also saying he should not have left the White House after the 2020 election. One of his biggest supporters, RFK Jr., is now calling for a major change to America's drinking water, one that most health experts strongly oppose. Vice President Kamala Harris focusing squarely on Michigan today after her surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live. A new poll gives her a slight lead in a very red state. What our ABC News poll shows about the race and what to watch for on election night. Our team is following all the latest developments. A late surge of election disinformation. The FBI is now warning about fake videos now flooding social media, where they're coming from, and how they threaten the election. The battle for control of Congress, why the Democrats face an uphill fight, and which races will be the deciding factors. Oklahoma is battered by multiple tornadoes, dozens of homes wiped out overnight. A horrific crash on a Michigan highway, 4 people killed, more than a dozen injured after a tractor trailer barreled into several vehicles. 2 spectacular finishes in the New York Marathon as more than 50,000 take to the city's streets. And America Strong tonight, a true patriot. For decades, she's made sure the voters get to the polls.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We are down to the wire in the race for the White House. The polls across the country will be closing in just about 48 hours from now. And right now, our latest polling suggests a tight race, but a stunning Des Moines Register poll shows Vice President Harris leading in solidly red Iowa as both Harris and former President Trump make their case in the battlegrounds. Today, Trump made headlines in Pennsylvania saying he should not have left office. And earlier, the former president suggested he would not mind if someone shot at the reporters covering his rally. Harris campaigning in Michigan today, urging voters to turn the page on hatred and division. The vice president sent off her California absentee ballot, joining 77 million other Americans who have already cast their votes. We have our team reporting tonight from the campaign trail, including those all-important swing states. And here at our ABC News headquarters in New York, we'll break down what to look for on Election Day. ABC's White House correspondent MaryAlice Parks leads us off.
Tonight, even before millions of Americans cast their vote on Tuesday, former President Trump already disparaging the election, falsely claiming cheating would be the only way he could lose.
The ones that should be locked up are the ones that cheat on these horrible elections.
State and federal officials say U.S. elections have only gotten more secure. Vice President Kamala Harris arguing Trump is trying to make people think their vote doesn't matter.
It is meant to distract from the fact that we have and support free and fair elections in our country. We did in 2020. He lost.
Trump today in Pennsylvania still denying those results, while talking about the border, telling supporters he shouldn't have left the White House.
I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly, because we did so well.
In the final days of the campaign, the former president's rhetoric increasingly dark and violent, and joking he wouldn't mind if reporters got shot if there were to be another attempt on his life.
To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news, and I don't mind that so much.
National polls have Harris and Trump locked in a dead heat. The battlegrounds also tight. But tonight, a surprising new poll out of Iowa shows Harris ahead by 3 points in that red state, still within the margin of error. But that poll raising questions about whether the vice president could be gathering momentum in some of the key states that will decide this race. Now, Trump has said that RFK Jr., who often spreads healthcare conspiracy theories, would play a big role in his future administration. Today, RFK Jr. is saying that if elected, Trump would call for fluoride to be removed from U.S. drinking water. Now, the CDC says that fluoride strengthens teeth and reduces cavities, Lindsay.
Yeah, Trump says he may move away from fluoride in water as well as vaccines. MaryAlice, thank you. Vice President Harris, meanwhile, is focusing on the critical blue wall state of Michigan with several campaign stops there. And she's getting a boost in Wisconsin from former President Barack Obama, who said America is ready to turn the page to new leadership, specifically Kamala Harris. The vice president's campaign is pulling out all the stops. ABC senior White House correspondent Selina Wang reports from the campaign trail.
With just 48 hours until election night, Vice President Harris barnstorming battleground Michigan.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
Harris making her final pitch for unity at a black church in Detroit.
I see a nation determined to turn the page on hatred and division and chart a new way forward.
The vice president delivering her closing message on Gaza in Michigan, a state with a large Arab American population.
I have been very clear the level of death of innocent Palestinians is unconscionable. We need to end the war, and we need to get the hostages out. And as President of the United States, I will do everything in my power to achieve that end and a two-state solution.
In this final stretch, Harris blitzing through the southern battlegrounds of North Carolina and Georgia.
This is someone who is increasingly unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance.
Even making a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live.
We know each other so well, we even finish each other's belief in the promise of America.
Today, the vice president posting that she's cast her ballot by mail.
My ballot is on its way to California.
In East Lansing, Michigan, Harris voters telling me they're confident in the vice president's chances.
I already want to call her Madam President. Right now, the early polls are showing a lot more women voting than men. Do you think more men are going to turn out and support Harris on Election Day?
It's important that all men come out and support women. Support our daughters, our wives, our mothers. Yeah, I think that, their choice, their bodies, it's on the election, it's on the ballot this year.
Lindsay, Vice President Harris is going all out to get out the vote. After rallying here in East Lansing, Michigan, she heads to Pennsylvania tomorrow, the most critical battleground state with its 19 electoral college votes. Major star power is going to be joining her in Pennsylvania. Katy Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga. They'll be firing up the crowds just one day before the election. Lindsay?
Another star-studded event. Selina, thank you. The election is likely to hinge upon 7 battleground states. The biggest prize is expected to be Pennsylvania, and that's where we find ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman. Matt, the battle at the ballot box is especially intense there in the Keystone State.
It is, Lindsay, and both candidates have committed a record amount of time and money here, cumulatively spending about $600 million. Both of them making at least 20 campaign stops here, both of them closing out their campaigns here. Trump with that message that voter fraud here has already begun, something that Governor Josh Shapiro told me earlier today was a, quote, blatant lie. But there are some areas of real concern, including pivotal Erie County, where possibly thousands of ballots either didn't arrive at the right address or didn't arrive at all. Officials say they're sorting through that right now, but they tell me that that could delay their final result tally by days, possibly even weeks. And of the dozen or so county officials I've spoken to across the state, Republicans and Democrats, all of them say they're committed to working round the clock until the final results are in. Most of them hope to have it done by late Tuesday, early Wednesday. And we're talking about how close these two candidates are. Most polls within the margin of error have them within a few 10,000 voters apart. That's fewer than the number of people who were at the Eagles game today, Lindsay.
That's good perspective for us. All right, they say they have new, faster equipment there. We'll see if that helps, Matt. Thank you. And we move now to the critical swing state of Georgia, which went blue by the slimmest of margins in 2020, fewer than 12,000 votes. ABC's Faith Abubey is there. Faith, 2 more days to go, and turnout has already topped 50%.
It has, Lindsay. The early voting numbers here in Georgia are historic. State officials say more than 4 million people have already cast their ballots in the early voting period, which ended on Friday. They are stressing that safeguards put into place to prevent election fraud are working. In fact, authorities are investigating 4 individuals they suspect may have tried to vote multiple times. And as we head into Election Day, Lindsay, it is worth remembering that for decades, Georgia voted for the Republican in the presidential election, but that was until 2020 when President Biden flipped the state blue. Lindsay.
Georgia on our mind once again. Faith, thank you. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze is in Phoenix, Arizona, which is a state President Biden won in 2020 but is now up for grabs. Elizabeth, what are you seeing there on the ground?
Well, and Lindsay, election officials here tell us they are bracing for a very tight race between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. Both of their running mates campaigning here this weekend. Senator Vance making his pitch in the pivotal Phoenix suburbs, and Governor Walz courting young voters and women. Arizona is one of 10 states where abortion will be on the ballot. Voters here will decide if the right to an abortion should be enshrined in the state's constitution. The Harris campaign is banking on that driving voter turnout. President Biden won this state by only 10,000 votes in 2020. Lindsay.
All right, expected to be tight once again. Elizabeth, thank you. Let's bring in ABC News political director and Washington bureau chief, Mr. Rick Klein. Hey, Rick, tell us about the new polling that shows just how tight a race this still is.
Yeah, Lindsay, our new national poll with Ipsos has a 3-point edge for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. That's about where this race has been all along. So it's really hard to read much into that. But if the battleground states are any indication, we have seen a little bit of movement that to me is really intriguing. The New York Times Siena poll, which is a very reputable pollster, they came out with numbers today that had Harris leading in some of the southern states, up narrowly in North Carolina and Georgia, but in a real dead heat in Pennsylvania and Michigan. That would be very tough for her to win without those states. That's a big problem sign for her, and it tells you about how close it is that they essentially flipped where they're most competitive and where they're worried about. And this really threw a monkey wrench into everyone's pre-election analysis, Lindsay. This is a poll of Iowa. Yes, Iowa, that has Kamala Harris leading by 3 points. A Des Moines Register poll, a very reputable pollster. There aren't many people who think that Donald Trump is going to suddenly lose a state that he won by 8 points, but it might indicate some of the weakness he has with voters in other states, including Wisconsin and Michigan. And when you talk about Wisconsin and Michigan, we talk about the paths to the presidency. The Democrats, Kamala Harris, the easiest way she has to win 270 electoral votes, it is with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. On the flip side, we're spending a lot of time thinking about other paths for Donald Trump. He could win 270 by winning in Nevada and Arizona, holding those southern states of Georgia and North Carolina, and then winning any of the big 3 upper Midwest battlegrounds. Pennsylvania, the biggest prize out there, probably the closest to a must-win anywhere on the map, Lindsay.
All right, so Rick, let's fast forward to election night. Which states are the candidates looking to as an early indication of where things might be heading?
Yeah, we're not going to learn everything on election night. We are going to learn a lot. This was the map at the end of the night in 2020, and I'm going to be clued into Georgia because there's a good amount of early vote, and a lot of that is going to come in pretty early in the night, particularly Atlanta and the suburbs. Probably about 50% of the vote of the whole state is going to be right there, and you have some deep blue urban areas and some more reddish suburbs and exurbs. All of that is going to be really, really interesting to watch. And again, things we're going to know relatively early. North Carolina, a little bit of a different animal. You don't have that same big urban center like you have Atlanta. Charlotte is a big blue dot that's going to be big for Harris, but the suburbs around that and some of the rural areas, that is deep red Trump country. North Carolina, the only battleground state that Donald Trump won 4 years ago, but it was his narrowest victory anywhere on the map, Lindsay.
All right, Rick Klein, our thanks to you. Let's bring in ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl. John, I know you got a chance to speak to former President Trump this morning. How's he feeling about the race?
Well, frankly, his voice was a little scratchy. He sounded tired. I talked to him early in the morning. He had been up all night doing his rallies. He was out there again today. But what was very interesting is I asked him, is there any way you could lose? Because he's saying he's up everywhere. He's got this substantial lead. And he said something I've never really heard him say before, which is, yeah, I guess it could happen. Things happen. Bad things happen. But one thing he was upset with me about, I had pointed out that his campaign wants him to, his advisors want him to focus on a fundamental issue of the economy, the border. It's worse now than it was when he was president. That's the argument they want to make. And he's out there, talking about putting guns in Liz Cheney's face, the Madison Square Garden rally, all that had. And I said that they're upset that he's not disciplined, that he doesn't have a message. And he was upset with that. He said the weave, that's what he calls it when he bounces around, is why he got elected president. And look what he's done today.
All right, let's talk about the mood in the Harris campaign.
Well, cautiously optimistic. They clearly think they have momentum. They took note of the Iowa poll. They don't think they're going to win Iowa, but they believe the momentum is with them. As our colleague Mary Bruce has put it, they are nauseously optimistic. In other words, they are definitely very nervous about where things stand, but they think things are closing right for her.
All right, John Karl, perhaps that Des Moines Register poll, perhaps a bellwether for some other states. Yeah. We'll see. All right, John Karl, thank you. Control of Congress is also on the ballot on Tuesday. Currently, Republicans control the House Democrats. The Democrats hold the Senate. ABC's Jay O'Brien joins us now from Mar-a-Lago. Jay, both the House and Senate up for grabs?
Yeah, Lindsay, here at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump and his allies watching not just the general election, but control of Congress, too, because in the Senate, Republicans would only need to pick up 2 seats to get power in that chamber, and Democrats have a tough map right now. Multiple Senate Democrats contending for re-election in reliably red or swing states. Meantime, in the House, Democrats feeling a little bit better about their chances. Democrats would need to gain 4 seats in order to wrestle control of that chamber in the House away from Republicans, and there are nearly a dozen House races across the country, Lindsay, that are either a toss-up or extremely competitive tonight. Lindsay?
Expected to be a nail-biter again. Jay, thank you. Authorities are warning of the threats ahead of Tuesday's final vote. Already, the FBI has identified at least 2 fake videos purporting to be from the agency. A disinformation video published last week believed to be the work of foreign state actors. Here's ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky.
Tonight, what intelligence officials have long feared is happening on the eve of the presidential election. The nation is being bombarded with disinformation. The FBI issuing a rare and urgent warning that videos circulating online with an FBI logo and animation are nothing more than the product of Russian internet trolls trying to sow chaos among bitterly divided Americans.
They want to undermine American confidence in our elections and trust in democracy. And they want to sow and stoke partisan discord. They want to pit Americans against each other.
This image, taken from a video on X, believed to be one of the videos referenced by the FBI, falsely claiming 3 groups had been arrested for rigging mail-in ballots. And this one targeting Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Both videos likely using computer-generated voiceover. In a statement, the FBI saying these videos are not authentic, are not from the FBI, and the content they depict is false. Intelligence officials say false information is often the work of foreign state actors like Iran and China, but most of all, Russia. The FBI saying Russia was behind debunked videos like this one last week, falsely claiming groups were attempting to destroy mail-in ballots. All of this disinformation is expected to continue and get worse even through the election. But Lindsay, officials say Americans should continue to trust reliable sources of information and be confident that their votes are going to be secure.
Okay, that is key. Certainly. Aaron Katersky for us. Thank you. And on election night, I'll be joining David and the entire team for coverage beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern, reporting from both campaigns on the races that will determine control of Congress and, of course, insight and analysis you can depend on here. There's so much more ahead here on World News Tonight this Sunday. Dozens of homes destroyed as tornadoes tear through Oklahoma. And what caused a deadly crash on the Michigan highway when we come back. Next tonight, multiple confirmed tornadoes battered Oklahoma overnight. Dozens of homes were torn apart in and around Oklahoma City. At least 6 people were hurt, but a very different story in New York City, which hasn't had significant rain in 2 months. In Michigan, 4 people were killed in a fiery crash late last night. Police say a tractor trailer slammed into several vehicles that were stopped for construction on I-96. According to investigators, that truck driver may not have seen the vehicles until it was too late. And when we come back, 2 fantastic finishes at the New York City Marathon. To the index now, in a race to the finish at the New York City Marathon. Kenya's Sheila Chepkirui pulled away in the last mile for the win. For the men, Abdi Nagy of the Netherlands held off the field to win in just over 2 hours, 7 minutes. More than 50,000 competed in the race, which took participants to all 5 boroughs of New York City. And when we come back, America Strong, the power of one volunteer dedicated to getting out the vote. Finally tonight, America Strong, a woman who's making sure the voice of every voter is heard. On Election Day, no one's busier than Perman Hardy in Lowndes County, Alabama. For the past 30 years, she has driven across 700 square miles, driving people to vote, many of them farm workers. If you need a ride, Perman Hardy is there with her truck, which has more than 300,000 miles on the odometer.
I go out on that farm and pick them up on their lunch break. You got to stop to eat. So why not come go with me and let's go eat on our way to the poll? I'll bring you back. There's a lot of excuses, but I don't take excuses.
Perman Hardy, the check engine light apparently on in that truck, but she is still making sure everybody gets out to vote. She is our America Strong. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Lindsay Davis. David Muir back here tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.